Thank you for listening to Shulchanaruchharav.com.
Alternatives to immersing in a mikveh for men if a mikveh is not available. It is customary of men of Hasidic Jewry to immerse in a mikveh every single day in continuation of the custom and tradition began in the times of the Baal Shem Tov and onwards. And this custom has spread to many other sects of Jewry who either toivel immerse in a mikveh every single day prior to davening Shachris, or periodically on Erev Shabbos, or only if they are the state of Balkari, or only on Erev Rosh Hashanah and Erev Yom Kippur, in which it states that all Jewry is accustomed to immerse for the sake of tshuva. All in all, whether you're immersing daily, weekly, periodically, Erev Rosh Hashanah, Erev Yom Kippur, the question is asked, what do you do if a mikveh is not available? And we don't just mean that a building with a working mikveh inside is not available, but likewise an ocean, a sea, a body of water that you can immerse in is not available in your vicinity. You don't live next to the beach, and you don't have the time or the means to travel there. Are there any other alternatives available for men to still fulfill this cherished custom of immersion? Or do we say if you don't have a mikveh or an ocean, then there's no way for it to be done? So before we begin our discussion, I must mention clearly that this only applies to men immersing in a mikveh, as the purpose for which men immerse in a mikveh, as we will now discuss, contains some leniencies of alternatives. However, the immersion in a mikveh of a woman does not have any of these leniencies, chas v'shalom, and there are no alternatives available other than a kosher mikveh, or at a time of need, the ocean, based on the guidelines discussed in the Poskim and given by Rabbanim. So let's get back to the male immersion and the alternatives. You see, the reason why men immerse in the mikveh is for one of two reasons. The first historic reason that we find is that in the times of Ezra, he made a famous takana which did not become binding to halacha because it didn't become widespread by majority of Jewry, that any man who released seed, whether accidentally or during intimacy, is prohibited from learning Torah or davening until he immerses in a mikveh. In other words, that Ezra HaSofer created a new type of impurity called Balkari, that is the term used for one who released seed, and required him to immerse in a mikveh before doing anything of spiritual religious obligation such as learning Torah or davening. Now, although this matter is not obligatory as explained in chapter 88 in Shulchan Aruch, nonetheless, many Yidden until today are careful in this, especially Chassidim and those who follow the teachings of Kabbalah, are very careful to always immerse. If they become a Balkari, they make sure to immerse the next morning prior to davening Shachris and get rid of this impurity. However, many others of Jewry, especially those of the Lithuanian Jewry, follow the dry letter of the law, which does not require them to immerse, and thereby many only immerse on Erev Rosh Hashanah and Erev Yom Kippur. This, however, is only one reason behind the immersion, and would not justify the custom of Chassidim to immerse every single day and every Erev Shabbos and every Shabbos. The second reason behind immersion for men is called Tesefes Tara, to add additional purity to the soul. Just as we find in the Torah that the mikveh acts as a purification measure for men and women against different impurities, so too it acts as a purifier to purify even a state of purity. And since every day we start our day anew to serve God, therefore, you want to add in our purity before we go ahead and do so, and this is the reason for the daily immersion. This second form of immersion is called an immersion of tshuva, and not an immersion to simply get rid of the Keri impurity, which may or may not be applicable at the time. So now that we want to discuss alternatives to going to a mikveh if a mikveh is not available, we really have to discuss it under the two reasons behind why a person immerses. Meaning, is there an alternative to getting rid of the Balkari impurity that Ezra established? Is there another alternative aside for dipping in a mikveh available? And if the answer is yes, does that alternative also help for the independent reason of immersion for the sake of Tesefes Tara, of additional purity on the body, like a form of tshuva? As it could be that an alternative will only help for one of those reasons, but not for the second. So to answer our question, are there other alternatives? The answer is that for the impurity of Balkari, someone, a man who released seed and needs to immerse due to that reason, there does exist alternatives brought in Chazal and the Poskim if a kosher mikveh is not available. However, for the second aspect of Tesefes Tara, adding purity to the soul, according to many Poskim, it only works with an absolutely kosher mikveh, and therefore the alternatives that we will mention do not help to add in this purity. And therefore, bottom line, already now you can understand that one should always try to immerse in a kosher mikveh or the ocean if he lives nearby, despite the availability of other easier alternatives, as we will discuss momentarily. So our first alternative of discussion is a swimming pool. Can one dip in a swimming pool instead of dipping in the ocean or in a kosher mikveh? So a swimming pool is made of drawn water, mayim she'uvim, which is generally invalid for the sake of a mikveh, as brought in Hilchos Mikvahs. Nonetheless, the Poskim record, as brought in the Alter Rebbe in chapter 606 and 88, that for the purification from the state of Keri, it is permitted even initially to immerse in mayim she'uvim, in drawn water. Thus, a typical swimming pool is valid for this immersion of Bal Keri, even initially. Nonetheless, even in such a case, the Alter Rebbe rules, so likewise rules the Mishnah Berurah in the name of Akiva Eger and other Poskim, that it only works if the drawn water is found in an in-ground vessel, such as a typical swimming pool which has a concrete base that holds the water. However, in overground vessels, such as an overground swimming pool that many people have in their backyard, or a blow-up swimming pool, would be invalid to get rid of even this impurity. And therefore, to summarize regarding the alternative of using a swimming pool, it indeed does help to get rid of the impurity of Bal Keri if it's an in-ground swimming pool. However, an above-ground swimming pool is invalid. Now, does an in-ground swimming pool also help to add the additional purity to Sefes Tahara, which is the second reason for immersion? The answer is, according to many Poskim, it does not, as you need an actual kosher mikvah for the sake of the Sefes Tahara. And thus, while it takes care of the first reason behind the immersion, it doesn't take care of the second. And therefore, initially, one should not immerse in a swimming pool if he has other alternatives available of a kosher mikvah. Now, regarding if the filter is on in the swimming pool, is it valid for the purification of Bal Keri? So the answer is that this touches upon the debate of whether zeichlin, which is streaming water, is valid to purify a Bal Keri, as in general it's invalid for a mikvah. And bottom line, while it is initially preferable to turn off the filter and escape from the question of this matter, if the filter cannot be turned off, such it's not your swimming pool, you don't have permission to turn it off, then you should not abstain from immersing just because the filter is on, as there are sides in halacha to validate it. Regarding the immersion of a Bal Keri, in Mirz Hashem, in the next lesson on this discussion, we will discuss taking a shower as an alternative to mikvah, if a mikvah or swimming pool is not available, and other alternatives that may also be available.
Thank you for listening to Shulchanaruchharav.com. Our free services of making Torah knowledge available to the public depends on donors like you. Please help us continue our work through making even a small contribution at Shulchanaruchharav.com under the Daily Halacha Dedication section or in the subscription page. Also, check out our online courses and many sefarim available for purchase that will both enhance your Torah knowledge and help support our work.